science, analytics industry. I've been dabbling with data for decision making.
Hello and welcome everyone to the next episode of AIM's podcast Simulated Reality. Today we have with us the co-founder and CEO of a data science service provider, Ganit, Shivaprasad KT. Hi Shiva, how are you today?
Good. How are you, Kashyap?
I'm good too. Thanks for asking. Shiva, it was a very funny story when your team reached out to us and said they wanted to talk with us about CQ. We were all really confused, and fair to say we read a lot about AI and data science because we produce content on AI and data science. Even Google, gave us different answers. So why don't we start with what is CQ, and so that we can lay the context for our audience, and then maybe we can take it forward.
No, wonderful. First of all, thank you for this opportunity, Kashyap. Pleasure speaking to you. Before I answer why you could not Google CQ, let me probably quickly introduce the company for about 30 seconds, right? So we are a AI ML data science consulting company, and we've been around for the last 6 years. I call it 6 years young company. And co-founded by 3 people: myself, Ashok Harwani, and Hariharan. So we were roommates during our MBA school, and we call it dorm room to boardroom kind of a journey. And it's been an amazing journey so far. Very gratifying. More so because we've been able to help customers realize the value of analytics and data engineering, right? So CQ is consumption quotient, and I'll talk about why Ganit is excited about it, why Ganit is pioneering this concept, and what is the need for this, right? And because we are pioneering it, Google is unable to give you that result today. Hopefully in the next couple of years, we would have done enough in CQ that you'll get some Google results, right? I'll give you a little bit of a background of how CQ came about, right? So this actually kind of almost talks about why Ganit was founded and why I was thinking about starting a company like Ganit, right? So for me, it's been about now almost 2 decades in data science, analytics industry. I've been dabbling with data for decision making for a very long time. Before starting Ganit, what I was realizing was that a lot of the projects that are commissioned on analytics, they had primarily 3 reasons why they were commissioned. Number one reason, and surprisingly and very funnily enough, was that, hey, I read this article in HBR, about this new trend in analytics, and can we do something about it? Can you, build a model, build a dashboard, and can you do something about it, right? If the genesis happens from just based on an article, I think it's a recipe for disaster. The second reason why people wanted to kind of start a project was because, hey, my CXO, my CEO asked me to do this, and can you do this for me, right? And the third was, obviously the real business challenge. An organization might be, seeing a decline in consumer customer base, in decline in sales, and they want to find out, what happened, why is it happening, what can we do in the future, right? So that's a genuine reason for customers to come to people like us. While the last reason is a genuine reason, the first 2 reasons were pretty troublesome, because if you start with those 2 premises, what happens is you end up with beautiful looking, glamorous dashboards, which do nothing for you, but just fill up your table chairs, right? And you also have a very finely tuned, right accuracy predictive analytics model, but now that is just sitting as a form of a deck or a bespoke tool in some corner in your IT stack, right? This leads to what I call as the decision debt, right? Which is either you're making a poor decision, or worse, you're not even making a decision, based on this. Some of the solutions that that you develop are taken out of context. People take one slide in a bigger deck out of context, and they put into their own deck and then fit their own narrative, right? All this led to, a very staggering statistic, which was about 90% of the analytical solutions that were getting created were not getting consumed, right? It's very
Hmm.
disheartening for me to see it, because, clearly there is money behind it. Clearly there is effort behind it, right? And the team, the data scientists, engineers are working very hard, but, you know, they are not making a decision. The customers are not making a decision. Um, I thought maybe there's a better way to kind of, look at this landscape, right? Instead of getting excited about just techniques and technology, I thought maybe we should think about consumption of that solution first, and the ability to make a decision better because of that, and then get excited about techniques and technology, right? So
Okay.
I want to start a company that actually focused on consumption rather than just getting excited about creation of analytics.
Okay, so consumption quotient is with the consumption of analytics. It's not really about anything to do with. So I'll tell you why I thought. So initially, when
Yeah.
I thought consumption quotient, I thought that this is about let's say there's a retail company, right? And probably their customers are not consuming as much, but this consumption is entirely different, right?
Yes.
I think this sets the context really well. Can you help us with an example of it, right? So maybe we can take retail, whichever sector you want to take a use case and give us
Sure.
an example of how companies have struggled because of keeping the consumption quotient low, and then how to change that.
Absolutely. So I think I think it's okay for a lot of people to not understand consumption quotient today, because it's a new concept, and that's what Ganit is trying to educate, pioneer, and also get excited about. Maybe I'll make it a little bit real with an example, right? When you think about a retailer, let's take a retailer, right?
Fair enough.
Uh, Typically, they'll have a demand forecasting problem. Most retailers will have a demand forecasting problem, right? I'll talk about, the as is situation, and then how Ganit does it differently, right? In a non-Ganit way, what happens is when a customer approaches a service provider like us, they come and say, "Hey, my demand forecast accuracy is 65%. Can you guys increase it to 75%?" Right? Now, it's a genuine problem, right? Forecasting, low forecast accuracy is a genuine problem. Now, the service provider will run with that, create a project brief, and say, "Hey, this is a demand forecasting problem. We need to increase the demand forecasting by 10%, and here is a success criteria for the project." More often than not, the service provider or the solution provider will stop there.
Hmm.
Ganit's way of doing is, it's actually a two-parter. Number one is, when you think about a demand forecasting as a technical problem, we ask, what is the business decision it is impacting, right? Now, 65% to 75% increase, 10% increase of demand forecasting, what will it do for your business? One could be, a lot of inventory might be, lying in one particular warehouse, because of which you actually have a bad demand forecast accuracy. Or, there is understocking that is happening in the places where it should not to be happening, right? Now, suddenly your accuracy problem has become a inventory, level, understock, overstock kind of a situation. So we actually traverse the customer from forecast kind of a lexicon to, okay, can I release this in? I think there's a lot of inventory stuck in, north region warehouse. And by the way, the southern region is actually starving. Now it's a business decision, right? So that's the second part to the consumption quotient, where inventory has now become a business decision, And now you don't want to obviously just free up or adequately stock inventory, but also you want to increase the customer service level, right? Now the project brief Ganit does is this, right? It is not 10% increase in accuracy. We do not sign up for that. In fact, we say, why only 10%? Or why 10%? Right? Even a 5% increase in demand forecasting accuracy might lead to, let's say, a $10 million release in inventory. That's still a great outcome. So now we have educated the customer about getting excited about a true business outcome, which is actually a bottom line impact if you are releasing inventory, or a top line impact if you have the right inventory at the right place so that there is no opportunity cost, right? You're able to sell more goods because you have the right inventory at the right place. So that is the difference between a non-Ganit way and a Ganit way of doing demand forecasting.
Fantastic. And what does it, so what does it take? So let's say tomorrow there is an organization, right? And they want to improve their CQ. Obviously, they can always come to Ganit and hire their services, which is one. But what will your, yeah, but what will your message be? So where do you start the journey to improve your consumption quotient, right? So let's talk about the retail example, because we have already dived into it, right? Let's say I am there is a person who's running the data analytics head of a Fortune 100 company, or a big retail store, and they want to they are realizing that their data analytics, while the team is strong and they have really good data scientists, they are still not consuming it. Now they have realized the problem, which is a good thing, right? The first step to solve a problem is understanding there is one. So you realize the problem. What is the first step? Where do they start?
That's a great question. And believe it or not, is the typical problem most organizations face, where they have a very strong internal team that does this, right? When they actually, the first step here is to involve the right stakeholders, right? When you look at demand forecasting, it can't just be a pet project of analytics COE of an organization, right? End of the day, the decisions are being made by people in supply chain, people in the field, in the operations team. Now we should understand the various decision inventory, or the rather various decisions the different stakeholders would take, and hence making a decision inventory of that particular problem, and saying that a supply chain person will make these two decisions differently if we had a better forecast. An operations person will make these three decisions differently if he or she had a better forecast. Now, identifying the right stakeholders is the number one step, right? Without that, it becomes a pet project, it becomes a tech project, which you should not, right? The second one is, making sure that you establish a success criteria, right? You can boil the ocean. There is no end to this demand forecasting journey, right? And I'm using the word journey because there is no end goal. There's no end post to this, to be honest, right? So you can keep improving it. You can keep improving on a regular basis, but you got to have a very staggered measurement of your success criteria, right? What do you call it a success in 6 months after this implementation? What do you call success 1 year from now, 2 years from now? So having that success criteria so that you know what you are working towards is extremely important, right? And the third and the last, important step here is that realizing that these problems are also, better solved in partnering with companies like us, because we would be seeing these problems across multiple, customers. We would bring in the industry expertise of a retail sector, but also if we had solved a similar problem for a CPG or a pharma company, we bring in the cross-industry expertise as well, which the customer, herself might not have, because of their own industry, nuances, right? So realizing that, they are not alone is the third or the most important, step in this.
Fair enough. Now, I understand what the first step is, right? But here is my thing. This is when I realize my consumption quotient is low. What if I don't realize it? right? I'm
Ah,
sure that there are a lot of industries today, companies who are using data analytics. They are seeing an impact, but they don't realize that there could be a lot more. Like, the profit margins could increase by a significantly higher scale than what we have improved using data analytics, or the cost reduction could be significantly higher than what it is. What do we?
yeah,
How do we address this problem when companies are not even understanding that their consumption quotient is low?
absolutely. I think let's kind of mathematically define what CQ is, so that people know how to kind of use this in real life, right? A CQ, we usually measure as a scale from 0 to 100, right? So hopefully, none other companies have zero CQ. They are a little bit higher than single digits. So we actually measure this. Typically people talk about ROI for a outcome of a project, but I think there are two metrics people need to keep in mind. First is ROI for sure, and second is ROE, and I'll talk about what that is, right? So in ROI, it's a simple definition. What's your return divided by what's your investment. Here, the return based on the project. Are you thinking about a bottom line return or a top line return? And then whatever ROI you want to measure, it's an important thing for you to establish. But if you think about analytics as a practice, and with AI, the new things like Gen AI, where experimentation and adopting to newer technologies is not a choice, right? Then, along with return on investment, you should also think about return on experimentation, and that's what I call as ROE. Not many projects, or not all projects, have ROI as a hard number. That doesn't mean that the project is not creating value to the organization. There is another parallel metric called return on experimentation, and this is about number of experiments that you do per unit time, right? And that needs to be increasing on a regular basis, right? So you can measure this on a quarterly basis. We usually suggest our customers to measure this on a quarterly basis. Depending on the industry landscape, some could be measuring on a 6 monthly basis as well. And some dynamic industries like D2C and e-com, they measure this on a monthly basis, where they need to invest in a lot of experimentation. And how do you really put a metric to that, right? So it's the combination of having a hard ROI mindset, but also not forgetting that you should also have an ROE mindset. And this is where the journey of actually measuring CQ starts.
Okay, okay. That's that's a very interesting concept. I think I'm learning new terms. I've never heard this term as ROE as well. So return on an experiment, which is really cool. Right. So my final question to you is, in terms of what advice would you give organizations? Obviously, again, Ganit can obviously step in to help, and there is this thing. What is your advice to organizations to keep their CQ high? What are some of the steps, or at an organization level, considering different stakeholders, that they need to take? What are some of the KPIs they need to measure? And how can they overall maintain the CQ high over the coming, in the short term as well as the long term? How can they start the journey?
Yeah. I think a couple of ways to think about this. Number one is, if you can establish, kind of the business outcome uh, for every project, every analysis, as I talked about, either as an ROI or an ROE, is a great starting point, right? And I think it's a good way to kind of start your CQ journey. And that's where you're actually kind of establishing a baseline of your CQ. And then once you know where you are, and then you can continuously monitor it, right? And the second advice is, for every project, there should be at least one decision that project is enabling them to do a little bit differently, right? So they should have the decision inventory in the project brief, right? Where they say that because of this project, these 5 decisions will be taken differently. And if people do not own up to this decision inventory, again, this will become more of a data project rather than a decision project, right? Now you're getting the drift. The Ganit is all about, making sure that the customers, take informed decisions, better decisions, better decisions than they took the previous day, yesterday, right? Now, in this journey, what they need to think about is, while they have a baseline of the decisions that they were taking earlier, how do they kind of continuously monitor the better decisions that they're taking, right? And a couple more things, for people to have a best practices, always listen, right? Have a open those windows. Don't have a closed house. Shut doors, shut windows will only stink, right? You got to open your windows a little bit so that you learn from other industries. Number one, you also learn from the latest and the greatest, right? And for every new thing that might be exciting, uh, experiment. It's okay, for it to fail, but as long as you're failing fast and learning from that, and hence, thinking about ROE as a mindset, right? So get that, for example, Gen AI. Most of my customers are now asking us, hey, what are those top 2 or 3 cool things that you guys can do for us on Gen AI? So in the last almost 10 months or so, we are all, kind of actively helping our customers, create use cases based on Gen AI, which is very exciting, right? And not all projects, as I said, will have an ROI because of a Gen AI project, but they'll definitely have an ROE, right? So these are some of the things, people need to, keep in mind when they start on this journey. And more importantly, when they have this mindset of, okay, let me keep experimenting and keep building my muscle of learning, and rate of learning and things like that, I think they'll be doing a okay job.
Okay, fantastic. On that note, let me conclude this podcast. Thank you so much, Shiv. It was very informative. There was so much to learn for me personally as well. Thank you for introducing me to CQ, ROE, and so many concepts. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Kashyap. I know, as I said, this is the journey, the beginning of the journey of CQ. Hopefully it'll find its feet, and then we'll, as you said, in 2 years from now, you'll have better Google results on CQ.